Well, good morning, guys.
Good morning, everybody. As the registrants and attendees join us this webinar, or join us this morning, this afternoon, this evening. As we always do, we'll give everybody just a few minutes to log in. In the meantime, for those of you who are already in the webinar and would like to let us know where in the world you are today, we always find that fascinating and appreciate sort of better understanding just how far and wide these webinars are going. So good morning, David in San Diego, Aaron in Cleveland.
Where are you guys, by the way?
We are in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Oh, how everything coming back to normal in New Orleans, Louisiana?
Everything is coming back slowly but surely. Haley and I both obviously evacuated for Hurricane Ida, although I think she stayed and evacuated after the storm. I evacuated with my family before the storm. Oh, Desiree, all the way in Luxembourg. Good afternoon. And then we were without power for about 10 days, I think. Once power was restored, obviously this was not a water event. This was more of a wind event with 150-mile-an-hour winds here in New Orleans, Louisiana, which resulted in lots and lots of downed branches, downed trees, downed power lines. So that's why it took so long for power to get restored. Once power came back.
Now you're back to reasonable normalness.
Yes, I mean, it's certainly funny, there's a big cleanup to do, but yes, reasonable normal.
I'm in Truckee, California, just on North Lake Tahoe, and we're actually here this week cleaning up dead branches and trees and pine needles and pine cones because of the fire risk. We have to do this every year. And we just got a big reminder with the fire in South Lake Tahoe that we need to make sure we get that taken care of. So I'm normally in New York, but I'm here in Truckee at the moment.
Fantastic. Rob Anran, thanks for joining us from the Netherlands. Hey, Joe, how are you? Thanks for joining us.
Yes.
Good morning, Tessa in Atlanta and Lawrence in Toronto. So we are far and wide this morning. Like I said, we're going to give everybody just another minute or two to hop on, and then we will get started with this morning's webinar. Hopefully everybody is staying healthy and well and having a productive Q3, which is almost over. I can't believe it's almost October.
Yeah, 9 days, right?
It's incredible.
9 days. Q3 is over.
I would say something like, oh, this year went by so fast, but do any of them not go by so fast? No. Has any quarter actually just dragged along where you're thinking, oh, will this thing ever end? I haven't had that experience yet.
Hopefully everybody is already starting to think about planning for Q4 and finishing up the year on a positive, strong note. So
yeah.
Joe, you got a shout out from Scott Shushansky.
Oh, cool. Tell Scott I said hi. So good to have him on the call.
All right, everybody, we're at about 3 minutes past the hour. Why don't we go ahead and get started? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Eugene Turk. I am the Vice President of Business Development at Align, and I want to welcome you to our monthly coach webinar for September 2021. Like I said, I hope everyone is doing well, staying healthy. This morning, we are thrilled to have Jeff Loehr and Joe Rojas of Start, Grow, Manage, I think formerly known as Red Sapiens, with a presentation on meetings matter and how to make them better. For those of you who may not be familiar with Start, Grow, Manage, it is a New York-based group of coaches and advisors to companies of all sizes and throughout the United States. As the founder and CEO of Start, Grow, Manage, Joe Rojas has helped dozens of entrepreneurs create million-dollar businesses and then see explosive growth from there. Jeff is the chief marketer and advisor for Start, Grow, Manage and has helped hundreds of entrepreneurs in more than 37 countries. He is also a co-founder of the Westchester Angels Investment Group and has supported dozens of startups in their quest for growth, while at the same time advising huge global companies like GE, Ford, and De Beers Diamonds. Together, Jeff and Joe and the rest of the Start, Grow, Manage team are focused on helping company leaders thrive in their business by focusing on the most important things and getting the most out of the time that they spend working on the business, including that critical time spent in meetings, which is what we are here to discuss today. We're honored to have Jeff and Joe present for us this month. As always, just one administrative matter. We want this to be as educational and informational for all of you as possible. Please feel free to pose any questions that you might have for our presenters using the chat feature, and we will direct those to Jeff and Joe at the conclusion of the presentation. Again, thank you all for attending this Align Coach webinar, and I will now turn the microphone over to Jeff.
All right, thank you very much, Eugene. Thanks for the introduction. As you said, what we really focus on is helping those entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders in organizations who are stuck, right? Who are at that plateau and thinking about how they break through. And like you said, meetings are actually a critical part of what I'm going to go through today. Is we're going to give you a little bit of context on why. I'm not going to go too long into this, but a little bit of context, because I think that's important to put this concept of meetings into. We'll get into the meeting myth and then go into 5-star meetings and how to have 5-star meetings. Sound good to everybody on the panel? Talk about context, this idea of start, grow, and manage. And what we have really discovered is there are these 3 phases, and you can see these phases in business, large business and small business. When you're looking at large business, you might be looking at teams and how they function. But there is this, if we put value on the y-axis and time across the bottom, you start and you have a specific idea, you specify that idea, you get going, and then you have to sort of switch towards that growth phase, towards building a machine. And as you build a machine, if you don't build the machine, you sort of stumble along the bottom. As you build a machine, you start to grow. And then you plateau unless you start thinking about how to improve, create, grow, deal with all of what's happening around you. And we call this process really creating the machine. And this is just to be clear so that we get all of our language right. You've got delivering an overhead. And if you don't build a machine, you get stuck in what we call the spin cycle, which is this thing in the middle. And then if you build a machine, then you can start dedicating less and less time towards less and less a percentage of time towards delivering an overhead, and more time towards thinking about the future, more time towards tuning the machine, right? And one of the key components of the machine is the execution engine, which is the quarterly 90-day plan. So we just talked about getting into that. There's then the 30-day plan. So there's sort of 3 of those a quarter. There's the leadership meeting 5-star agenda. We're going to go through the 5-star agenda here. There's the daily huddle, and then the running list, capture list, and week-to-week lists around the things that you have to get done, all of which fit into Align's model. And what's key for each of these is you'll notice all of these involve some sort of discussion. All of these involve people coming together to figure things out, right? So I get into what is a meeting. So what adjectives would you use? So anybody sitting here, right? What adjective would you use to describe a meeting? And you can type it in if you want, but what I really want is for you to get that in your head, right? To think about what is a meeting. And Joe, when I say this, what are some of the things that typically come up?
Boring.
boring.
I want to pull my eyes out.
Yeah.
Another meeting. I
Right.
have to do this again. Didn't we just have a meeting? I could go on, but
Yeah,
that's
no,
the
and I like
general
the way Eugene says
feeling
it,
is
right?
like, why do we have to have a meeting?
Why do we have to have more meetings, right? And could have been done in an email, unnecessary. Alignment between team members is sort of, that's where we're going. But I think that in general, the words that we use to describe meetings are something about them being, there's a lot of negative terms involved with meetings, right? And I'm the worst because I don't know, they drive me nuts. But they're it drive me nuts if they're not done right. And if you look at this, you know, Peter Drucker once talked about 7,000 hours of CEO time spent in meetings and 300,000 hours spent in the organization preparing for meetings. You know, and that's a lot of time spent in meetings. And Peter Drucker himself said that meetings are, by definition, a concession to a deficient organization. For one either meets or one works. And you know, I think clearly Peter Drucker had some great ideas, but I think that he's missing something here, right? Because here's the problem: if we don't meet, right? If we don't have meetings, then we just end up in this paradigm of working. We work harder, we grind, we do more. We bring all of these people together so that they can do more work, right? And everybody's working, everybody's trying to do stuff. You might hire somebody and say, just go do stuff, go over there, make that happen or make that happen. And you're not actually bringing them together. So you end up with this Sisyphusian task of rolling the boulder up the hill, right? And then having it come back down, and you get into this grind and work and work and work, right? And Joe, we have a saying around the company, right? Those who grind
lose the war. They lose the game.
Lost the game.
So,
well, okay.
So they lost the game. And this, by the way, he who grinds lost the game. And I say lost the war because I was in the army, and this is kind of how I think, right? I think everything is like, I got to sit rep every day. Everything is like that. But this was said by this brilliant luminary that, you know, you got to get. This guy knows what he's talking about.
So you've taken the self-deprecating humor a little. But yeah, so you know, this is our expression. Those who grind lost the game. And you know, I did actually look up the term meeting in the dictionary, and it is not by definition an inefficient organization. You know, there is something else going on here. And I just ask you to think of an organization with no meetings. An organization with no meetings is one person working and grinding, a bunch of freelancers doing work, not figuring out how to work better, not exchanging ideas. They're not taking advantage of the knowledge or expertise that others bring to the table. So meetings are useless if you operate in a market that never changes. Your work requires no thinking, right? You never have to solve problems. And you have a strict hierarchy where the boss has all of the answers. So if you operate in this environment, it looks something like this, right? If you operate in this environment, then there is no need for meetings. But otherwise, let's talk about how we can make them more effective. You know, I would say that meetings are the lifeblood of an organization. And to quote Patrick Lencioni, you know, he says meetings are the linchpin of everything, right? If someone says you have an hour to investigate a company, I wouldn't look at the balance sheet. I'd watch their executive team in a meeting for an hour. If they're clear and focused and have the board on the edge of their seats, I'd say this is a company worth investing in. Because how we communicate and how we engage, right, is key to how we actually build the business machine. So when we talk about the business machine, we're talking about moving out of this Sisyphean sort of pushing a boulder up the hill and bringing other people to help us push boulders up the hill, and everybody engaged in how we're going to get up to the top, to actually building the machine that lifts the boulder, takes it to the top of the hill, that we can steer, that we can control, that we can strategize, that we can think about going forward with, right? So why meetings matter? Meetings are good for, and somebody put it here in the chat, right? Alignment, right? To share challenges, develop solutions or innovate, and take advantage of the different abilities in the organization. So it's not that meetings are bad, it's just that we don't run meetings very well, right? Meetings are not the problem, bad meetings are the problem. You know, sitting through, I remember once when I was at Anglo Gold Ashanti, you know, and I shouldn't say that. So it wasn't, I was with this random company, and you know, the people would get up and you know, they would present something, and then the boss would just, you know, kill them. And this isn't just this company. I've seen this over and over again in big companies. It'd stand up and then they'd point out everything that was wrong and everything that was awful, and then they'd go down. The next person would stand up and give a presentation, and they put, you know, throw darts at them and beat them up, and then the next. And these are not effective meetings, right? These are not the way that an organization should work and should run a meeting. I don't know, Joe, anything else to share here before we get into the meeting template?
The whole thing, I like what Krista said, is that the meeting, you have to have meetings, but they have to have a purpose, right?
Right.
And so having a clearly defined purpose and a clear-cut agenda that lets you move the whole intent is to move the conversation forward. Are you moving the conversation forward or not? Are you moving as a team? Because that slide that you showed before, that showed the 1, 2, and 3, right? The start, grow, and manage. Where you're going to get the biggest bang is at those inflection points, right? First you start, and then when you go from start to grow, when you're building that machine, you need a particular kind of alignment to be able to build that machine. And that's where people get stuck in that spin cycle. And so what we're talking about here is having the type of purposeful meeting that helps you move the conversation forward. So you don't have to be like this lady here on the right with the paper over your face and like, no.
Right. And that's that's the key of what we're trying to create. And those meetings are, that execution engine is essential to running the machine. It's essential to making the work, but we have to make sure that there's a purpose. We have to make sure that we're aligned. So we're going to talk about the 5-star meeting, and I actually do have a template here, but Eugene is going to build this into a line. So when you have the recording, we'll have a link. You can build this, will be built into a line, all of the components of it, so that you can have this right in your system. So let's get on to how we run an effective meeting. Sound all right?
Beautiful.
Okay, so meeting rules. First of all, these are the key meeting rules that lead to a 5-star meeting. And I should say, the 5-star meeting, this is what we do with all of our clients. We put all of our clients under this meeting schedule. We have all of our clients go through this. And there's something universal that happens. At first, everybody fights it and say, oh, I don't know. I don't know that I want, oh, do we really have to meet and have these conversations? And it's, oh, so much effort. And then afterwards they say, and after about, I don't know, it takes what, 4 or 6 weeks for people to then say, and they're like, I don't know how we ever ran our business without this. Right? I don't know how we ever functioned without this. So keep this in mind. Think about how you can apply this in your organization. The meeting rules that we really bring to each one of these is the idea of staying on topic and capturing items that stray. So, this is really hard for Joe and I, but it's the key thing is to stay on topic, not chase all these squirrels that come up, not go down different rabbit holes all the time, but really focus. And invariably new ideas are going to come up, and they're going to be interesting, they're going to be shiny, and they're going to draw your attention. So capture them. write them down, but come back to what the topic is, come back to what you're there to achieve, right? Which comes back to really assign tasks and follow up. And part of those tasks may be to get to those items that you captured, right? Understand what those tasks are. Be sure that you have the follow-up. Be sure that you have the assigned goals, that you're creating those smart measurable targets that you can actually follow up on and make sure that you're completed. The next one is to have an open dialogue. So when I told that story before of that random company that I didn't mention, of these people having these fights, right? It's not an open dialogue. If you're presenting and then the guy's coming and cracking the whip or pointing out your mistakes the whole time, you want a dialogue that people are engaged with. All right, now here is a key one that I think everybody can probably relate to, is the idea of starting on time and ending on time. So you cannot have a 60-minute meeting go on for 90 minutes. We do have them. Sometimes they get extended a little bit. Hold on, just a little bit, but then you have to ask permission. You have to out the fact that you're going on longer and be sure that this isn't a habit. What were you going to say, Joe?
And this is critical, right? This started and on time, because if you habitually don't end on time, people don't want to come to your meetings. They don't want to come because they don't know what's going to happen. It's going to mess up their day. It's going to break up their flow. You need to let people go back to do what they were doing. They need to be able to put it on the calendar. It starts on time and it ends on time. When it doesn't, it's a killer. And that's why that's the number one reason people don't want to come to meetings, because they don't, not only am I going to get nothing done, I'm not going to get my own work done because I don't know when this thing's going to be over.
Right. So I mean, the reason they don't come to meetings because they hate meetings because they can't schedule them, right? They hate meetings because they're awful to be in, because they're straying from the topic the whole time, because there's no follow-up and it becomes a waste of time, right? So the third one is the third one. Where did I get that? The third one. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's because everything is always in threes, right? And this time they're 5. So for anybody here, right, Haley, from a marketing perspective, it always has to be an odd number. 7 is the best number. 11 is okay, but 3, consultants use 3 all the time, and now I'm gone with 5. So I don't know. It's all very confusing for me. But the last one is to structure your meeting. Okay, I am an unstructured creative. So structuring meetings is like pulling teeth. But here's what I've discovered through years of doing these things. If your meeting is not structured, you cannot stay on topic. You will not assign tasks. Your open dialogue will be all over the place, and you will never end on time. So the structure is key. So what we're going to go through now is our structure of a meeting. And this is the meeting that we encourage people to have on a weekly basis. The quarterly agenda, the quarterly meeting is very similar to this. Your huddles are going to be much shorter. So this has nothing to do with the huddles, but this is your weekly 60 to 90-minute meeting that you're going to do with your team. And so we're going to take you through each element of the template. So it starts by just identifying the team, who's there, members present, what you want to accomplish, right? I'm sorry, members present, and some idea of what you're doing here. Then we start with a welcome, right? That's really talking about good tidings. What has happened? What is a win or an insight that you've done in the past? What in the past week? What is something that's good that's happening in the organization, for you, for the organization, for the company, whatever it is. And we do this very consciously to set a space between the beginning of the meeting and whatever was happening beforehand, right? So there's a real start point, and it puts people in sort of this positive space. And that's really important, because if we let the conversation go negative from the beginning, it will, right? There's something about us pointing out mistakes and everything. So we want to start off with something positive. And this is about 5 minutes of conversation. And then we go through North Star KPIs. So what are your big KPIs that are critical to your business? And the challenge we have with with business owners, with entrepreneurs, with people building businesses, they always want to have 25 KPIs. They always want to talk about details. They always want to get into what's going on in many different spaces, but you can't really do that, right? You've got to really focus in these meetings on what are the big things that are happening. What are the things that if it were wrong, you would come back from vacation to fix, or you would stop, everything to get it back on track. These are the key North Star KPIs that you want to have. And we call them North Star KPIs because we create your North Star vision, and that's your guiding principle, the guiding piece of your business. And then we move on to the team update with your strategic pillars. Now, when you've gone through your quarterly planning, you've looked at what your strategic pillars are. And people have responsibility for those pillars. So you'll have here a pillar update where you have your different pillar, and you identify whether or not you're on or you're off track for each one of these pillars. You can start to have a short conversation about each of them, why they're on or off track. You might capture some significant staff or client developments here, but this is really about those strategic pillars. And are you moving forward on those strategic pillars? Now what we would do is say, if you come up against a conversation, so this is always where it gets dangerous, right? Now you're going to start having conversations that are going to lead to shiny things. Now you're going to have conversations that are going to lead to other things. So you want to put that in your hurdles and opportunities list. You want to have that somewhere else. And Joe, every time I say shiny things, by the way, Joe's going to bark like a dog because he's chasing squirrels. For anybody out there, this is what I have to put up with on a daily basis.
All day long, he has to put
all
up
day
with
long.
It. I feel bad for
long.
him.
Yeah. The things that I suffer through. So every time you hear the barking, it's Joe going off and chasing a squirrel, right? Or some other shiny.
And I have to say, when we started implementing this ourselves, because we had to implement it for ourselves, it was really hard. It was really hard. And I'm a shiny thing kind of guy. So any one of these pillars could set off a conversation that will set me off, and I'm going down this road. And it was great for Jeff or Heather or anybody else on the leadership team to be able to say, hey, that's later. And then Jeff will talk a little bit when that happens. But there's actually a place for those conversations in the meeting agenda. So you can snatch it out of here and throw it to where it belongs. And then I don't have to chase it anymore, because now it's someplace where I know that conversation is going to happen. And that's kind of how my brain works. I want to go attack the thing right away. But if you want to maintain the structure of the meeting, you can't. You have to be able to look at this thing and say, well, is it on track or is it off track? When it's off track, I want to go talk about it right away. And it's like, no, we're going to put that in its place. Go ahead, Jeff.
When something's off track, we have to identify what the hurdles are, and then we capture the hurdles, and we'll talk about hurdles in a second. And we'll identify some to-do, some things that need to happen. Maybe we need to have a meeting. Maybe we need to have a conversation. So let's capture that. And that brings us to the to-do list. So this is not your to-do list. This is a to-do list that's specific to these management meetings. Like, here are some things that came out of the management meetings that we need to be sure make it onto our central to-do list, make it onto our task planning, right? Because these are things that have come out of the conversation. And we found that it is so key to have here this management, just high level. Here are some of the big tasks that we said that we were going to do from meeting to meeting, specifically to the meetings, right? So we'll have here the previous meetings, and we always have somebody responsible for, capturing the things from the previous meetings. We'll capture the things from this meeting as we go through. We'll look at, did we do the things that we said we were going to do last week? And these might be things as simple as, hey, you've got to, schedule a meeting with somebody else, or have a conversation about, or do something, or even put it in a task list, or create a project, right? But it has to get done, because this is something that we've identified in the meeting has to happen. So from previous meetings, these all come in here. And then from this meeting, these are the ones that we capture here. And we'll assign the who, we'll put a due date. And so we'll just go through this quickly right here at this part of the meeting, right? And you see here, we only have a couple of minutes for it, because this isn't really about getting into all of the details. This is really about, did we do this? Did we not do this? Why? Bring it back to consciousness, so that we can make sure that it gets done if it wasn't done, and that we're keeping a running list of the meeting topics that come out of, or to-dos that come out of this topic. the next section then, so now we've got the to-do list, and now we get into the leadership roundtable. So here, these are any issues that require team agreement, anything that's come up, anything over the last week. And so typically what we will do is we'll have someone responsible who will start capturing these after this meeting for next week's meeting, right? Here are some of the things that have come up. Here are some of the issues that we need to resolve. So we'll really spend some time resolving these issues. And this can be, anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. Sometimes it's a little bit longer. As long as you're sticking to your 60 or 90-minute schedule, it works. And what we will do is we'll either come to a resolution of the issue here. So we'll either come to an agreement, we're good, or we create a to-do out of it that we have to have another meeting, another conversation, or we create a hurdle out of it where we have to talk about hurdles. But this is really the part where we have this exchange of ideas. It's more of an open conversation, and it's a lot less structured.
And what I like about this section is that in sometimes there isn't a place to fit things. This is the place where you put it. Like, where do we put that? Well, I don't know. Well, we'll put it on the leadership roundtable, and then we'll discuss it when we get to that area. So that's kind of what that is. And it could be something simple like, oh, we need to replace all the computers. We need to get consensus that that's what's going to happen. Okay, well, let's have a conversation about that, right? Something that needs approval, something that needs the group to make a decision together. We're moving, like something like that. That's a conversation that you have at the leadership roundtable.
We can also put in project updates here. So if there's a project that's working, there might be a project update, right? And if it's going to go longer, if it's the type of thing where you need an hour to update people, then you schedule the hour here and you make that a to-do. You don't go, this is another place where it's really easy to get into lots of detail and people start talking, and Joe starts barking and squirrels. Let's have a half an hour conversation about each thing. And somebody really has to exercise discipline. I don't know, somehow in our company that becomes me, but we're like, no, enough. Maybe because I just don't have the patience.
It's bizarre that you get to be that guy. It's crazy.
I know. I just have no patience. I'm just like, no, time to move on. Stop talking about these things. And so we have this, we could schedule things out of this, and then we come specifically to hurdles, and this is can be as long or longer than the actual, leadership roundtable, where we've identified hurdles either in this meeting or through the week. So we have, we also said you should have a daily huddle, 10 minutes. And out of the daily huddle, you often identify hurdles, right? And then we'll discuss the hurdles here, and we can give them a priority. We identify what the hurdle is, we assign somebody to it, and then we can talk about whether, we can tick off whether it's resolved or scheduled. And this becomes sort of a running list of hurdles over time. And sometimes we can resolve the hurdle right here. We can identify what the solution is. Sometimes we have to put a little bit more thought to it, and we'll put a team together around, all right, let's have another conversation, a specific conversation around the hurdle, where we actually go through our clarify model to solve the hurdle. But understanding these hurdles are really important, because you'll find in the organization that people won't be able to get things done. They won't be able to perform. And the question is why is it not getting done? And one of the things, if you don't think about it as a hurdle, then what happens is you get into that, you need to get it done. Why is it not getting done, right? Rather than understanding why it isn't getting done and fixing whatever is keeping people from doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's amazing. Sometimes these hurdles are things that people have that they're really struggling with, that we solve in 30 seconds. Right. Somebody else on the meeting says, oh yeah, no, I've done that. That's no problem. Here, help me out. And this is something that's held somebody back for a week or 2 weeks. And if we hadn't actually outed it as a hurdle, if we hadn't captured it as a hurdle, it would still be holding them back.
Yeah.
So these hurdles are key.
We solved the hurdle once for a company where every technician was late all the time. It was like this thing where they couldn't get the technicians out the door on time. And when we identified what the actual hurdle was, it was they had to pick parts in the morning. We hired a parts picker, and that resolved the hurdle. But that took really clarifying, figuring out where the problem was in the supply chain process, and then fixing that. And so that's what this conversation is intended to do. And sometimes it takes having a separate conversation. You set up a separate meeting and you have a meeting about that. And sometimes you can, like Jeff said, in 10 seconds, you're like, oh, that's happened before. Here's what you do for that.
And then finally, we have notes that we capture here. And then at the very end of the meeting, everybody gives it a rating, 1 to 5, no whys, whats, or conversations about it, just a rating of 1 to 5. 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. And the objective here is over time to get them up to a 5. Generally everybody knows why a meeting hasn't been very good. So, and we just find that adding that ranking there has an interesting psychological effect around, we're striving for a high quality meeting here. The next time we're striving for something high quality. So when somebody says, no, it's time to move on, we listen, and for some reason, I don't know what it is, the giving the rating really helps focus us on the meetings. So that's it. That's the agenda. That's the way we recommend setting up your meetings. And I realize that there are a lot of components here. I realize it looks like a lot of conversation. I would say this significantly reduces a lot of the other meetings, a lot of the small annoying meetings that happen throughout the business. What we recommend is your daily stand-up, 10 to 15 minutes, a weekly leadership team, 60 to 90 minutes. And this agenda is really perfect for that leadership team meeting. Having a problem solving, hurdling meetings as you need, where you're really focused on solving a problem, and then getting into your quarterly plans and doing a quarterly planning session. So that's our concept of meeting. This is what we do with our clients to help them get their meetings straight. I just quickly want to let you know what we do. We have our program. We start with helping businesses really create this engine, really create the machine. The execution engine is one part of it. We start off with clarifying the business model. We have a breakthrough session. We do a 90-day business accelerator, and then we get into the coaching and the long-term stuff. If you're interested, there's the SGM. If you go to bit.ly/SGM business model, this is a free business model training. We'll give you a free business model training. Right now, it's actually a very hokey landing page that I have to fix, but you'll go there, put in your name and email address, and then we'll sign you up. It's a manual process at the moment, kind of embarrassing. But we'll get it fixed. And we'll get you into that training. And then we have a breakthrough session, only if you're interested. And if you want to learn more about Start, Grow, Manage, it's startgrowmanage.com. We have library training community. We have Thrivers 360 business building groups, and then we have this platinum coaching that's more the one-on-one stuff. And that's our business. And this is how we make meetings work. And would love to answer any questions that you guys have.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Yes, please, if you have questions, jot them down in the chat and we'll direct them. I actually have a couple of questions myself, because one of the things that you talked about was open dialogue as a fundamental of these meetings. And what we often hear many times is that you invite a group of people into a meeting, whether it be a weekly team meeting or maybe a monthly all hands on deck sort of review meeting. And the question becomes, how do you get open dialogue from the quiet voices in the room? What happens and what annoys a lot of people many times is that the people speaking in the meetings are always the same people every week or every month. And there are others who are part of the meeting, but not really an active part of the meeting. So is there something that you can do to sort of help facilitate true open dialogue by getting those quiet voices heard and getting them to speak up about their ideas?
There are a couple ways to think about it. The first is that you have different types of people in an organization. So you have the people who are going to talk first, and you have the people who are going to listen first. And it's okay for the people who are listening to listen first and then talk later. But I think it's critical for the leader of of the group, of the team, of the session to facilitate that conversation. And you know, the way you do it is by asking questions and bringing focus. So what you will find is that people, if you just let it go, the people who talk are going to start straying, they're going to start chasing squirrels. And so the facilitator has to bring that person back to the topic, right? And then you will find that people don't participate like you're saying, and so you have to ask them questions. You have to draw it out. And I do think that when you start with a team, the distinctions are very clear, right? And if you're facilitating, if you're leading the team and you're really drawing out those people who aren't communicating, and you're giving them that safe place, right? Over time, the team becomes more communicative. Over time, you get a lot more engagement, and over time, you break down those barriers. But it really depends on the leadership and the facilitation.
And we really see that in our meetings, Eugene. Like when we start, there's always 2 or 3 people that are really quiet. And our job is to continue to suss that out and suss that out and suss that out and ask those people specific questions.
Yep.
Call them out. Say, hey, so-and-so, what do you think about this? Right. And then what you'll find is when they start talking, it's like, oh my God, why didn't you say that before?
But the thing is, it can take people, you know, I like to listen first, you know, and I like to hear what's out there. It takes me a little bit longer to formulate those opinions. So I can't really say it before, you know, it takes a bit. I'm not shy. I won't let the meeting go on without giving my opinion. But if for somebody who is more on the you know, shy side, you want to draw out those ideas. We actually have one person who works with us, and she's very reluctant to just throw her ideas out. And at the very end, you know, we always ask her, and then she's got the key. She's just, I don't know why she's like, well, you know, I was just thinking, what if we scrap everything that you guys have been talking about for the last 10 minutes and we do it that way? And we all look at it. Yeah. I'm thinking of, well, you know, I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Carlos,
I know who
right?
you're talking about.
Jeff, there was a question posed. What are your top tips for keeping meetings from going stale, particularly the daily stand-ups?
So the key with the daily stand-ups is that they can only be 10 minutes or 15 minutes, you know, 10 to 15 minutes. And
15 minutes
we,
is long.
yeah, 15 minutes is long. And we really, this is really hard at the beginning because everybody wants to go on and on. You have to sort of know, you know, move. But the way we do it for the daily stand-ups, very simple, 3 questions. You know, what amazing thing did you accomplish today? What are you working on tomorrow? And what is holding you back?
Yeah,
right.
We do them at the end of the day. We do them at the end of the day, which is why we say, what amazing thing did you accomplish today? If you do them in the morning, then, you know, what amazing thing will you accomplish today? What did you get? What amazing thing did you accomplish yesterday?
What's holding you
back? What will you get accomplished today? And, you know, where you stuck? What's holding you back?
And again, we're getting at the hurdles. And that's how we make it. I'll tell you what, if you just go and say, okay, we're going to have a morning meeting, everybody get your coffee. And what did they used to, you know, the first cup of coffee meeting, and then you'd, there's first cup of coffee meeting versus the second cup of coffee meeting. And so you use the first cup of coffee to fortify for the second cup of coffee meeting. But we want these to be first cup of coffee meetings where nobody's fortifying, you're just quickly, all right, here, hey, welcome. This is what I did yesterday, what I'm doing today. And I could really use some help with. And that's what we want, is that I could really use some help with conversation.
Yeah, and that's certainly the way that we do it at Align. We have a daily meeting, a number of daily meetings, depending upon the team or the group that's getting together. And it really is intended to be a very quick update on what have I got going on? What am I struggling with? Is there some particularly good news that I need to share with the rest of the team, or other information that will help someone else do their job, or give them information that is important for them to know to be able to do their job. The other thing that we find that's critical for keeping daily huddles very efficient is actually preparing for the daily huddle in advance. So in the Align software, we always advocate that you would go in and actually answer those 3 questions, write it out in the software, so that when you get in the meeting, you read out what you've already written. rather than standing in front of your colleagues or on a Zoom and sort of racking your brain for the answers to those questions. Because once you sort of start fumbling and bumbling, you tend to go off on tangents and you become very verbose, and the meeting then tends to last longer than 10 or 12 minutes. And that's what sometimes tends to frustrate people. So if you spend 5 minutes before that huddle to document your answers to those three questions, read that out, because you've already done the pre-thought that this is the most important information I need to share with the rest of my team. That's what keeps those meetings very efficient and hopefully not stale for the rest of the group.
We've got them down to 5 to 7 minutes. Our meetings, they're like really, really tight. And the other thing to keep in mind is if a thing that needs to get solved, somebody says, here's what I'm stuck with, and you know that that's a real like conversation that has to happen, don't do it in this meeting.
That's correct.
That's what will kill everybody, because there's 10 people in the meeting. There's 10 people in the meeting. One person will say, oh, this is the problem that I have. Another person will have the solution, and they'll start talking about it right there in the meeting. And now there's 8 other people sitting there going, waiting for them to finish this conversation. So don't do that.
Right.
You say, oh, I can help you with that. We'll set up a meeting. And then you have a meeting afterwards and you take that, because if not, it's a killer.
We'll take that offline. Jeff, a question was posed: is the to-do list part a time-limited block in your meeting agenda, or is that just a running list that gets updated throughout?
So it's both. We review the to-do list quickly. Did we do the things that we talked about doing, last week? Do we need to bring something back up into people's consciousness? But what we don't, and we do time limit it because we don't want to get into a debate as to why it did or didn't happen. So it's a really quick look at, here are the things that we said we were going to get done last week. Did we get them done? All right, any hurdles, anything that we need to talk about, we can put them in the hurdle section. We can put them in the round table. But it also gets updated throughout. So the to-dos that come out of the meeting are actually, captured in today's meetings section, and then those are shared with the entire team afterwards, so everybody knows what they have to work on. And that's, so it's very time limited, because and the problem is people can spend a lot of time on to-dos, what they did, why they didn't do it, what happened, and then you get into the gossip and the story. Nobody actually cares. So just focus on, did you get them done, and then capture the ones from this meeting.
That was a follow-up question about what was the notes section for?
Yeah, because you should be able to keep the notes in each one of the individual sections, right? Invariably, there are other things that come up. As human beings, they're like, oh, well, note this, or remember this, or we have to remember that, and so we have the note section for all of that stuff that comes up that doesn't really belong in the
hey, remember, you got to buy the book. That's like not a to-do, doesn't really fit anywhere. It's not part of the operational plan, but you need a place to capture something that was specific to that meeting. That's what the note section is.
And then the funny thing is, so now we have this list of these things, and then we remember that thing that we talked about. When did we? Oh, that was in the middle of June. Oh, and we'll go back and get that meeting note, and then find that little blurb that we put into the meeting notes. So it's just a note section for any notes related to what came up that don't fit in the other sections.
Jeff, one of the things that I want to make clear is that you've sort of laid out the agenda or the sort of framework for a meeting. Obviously, the suggestion or the recommendation is that people go in and document all of their information within that framework before the meeting. So you're spending 10, 15 minutes before you get in that weekly leadership meeting and documenting all of that.
So that's a good point.
What's the importance of the documentation in advance of the meeting?
So and I you're right, and I should have said that better, that we do have to have that prepared. Like the North Star metrics need to be prepared beforehand. Are you on or off track has to be prepared beforehand. The leadership topics are prepared beforehand, and that's really key to making the structure work. Because if you're filling it out as you go along, That's when everybody's
Yeah.
sitting around having a conversation and trying to, if you're trying to calculate your North Star metrics while you're in the meeting, this is when the rest of everybody else, they're just rolling their eyes like, oh God, I've got so much to do. I don't need to sit here and watch this person, calculate a metric. So having that documented beforehand, and I, like I said, at one point, we do have for the leadership team roundtable, we will have this week's agenda prepared and next week's agenda prepared this week. And so we'll go through that. We'll add things as they come up during the week. Hurdles that we capture that we can't solve, we'll add to that during the week, so that by the time we get to the meeting, we already know what it is that we're talking
Right.
about. We're
So
not
there's
making
one
it up as
person
we
in
go
our
along.
company. There's one person in our company that's accountable for that, and we just send that person everything. Here's the hurdles, here's the stuff, and then by the time that we get to that meeting, now you can do it in the Align software also. You can just log into the Align software and add whatever that hurdle or that thing is. The good thing about having one person do it is that they can check and see sometimes those things that we think are a hurdle, they're not. So they can kind of check against what is being solved at the time and say and respond and say, hey, there's a solution for this already. I have to wait till the meeting. Here it is. So there, either way is fine. If you're a smaller organization and you don't have somebody who's assigned to that, then you can certainly document it in the Align software, and then you go back and look for, you should do about 15 minutes of prep time before every meeting, where you're reviewing everything and making sure that it's exactly that you've got everything that you need in there for your part of the meeting.
The other benefit, and certainly I've experienced this a number of times, is sometimes you can't make the meeting. You can't be a part of a daily huddle, or you missed a meeting because you're traveling, or you had a client meeting or whatever. The ability to then have access to that information so that I can go back and read, whether it's in Align or some other place, what everyone talked about, what everyone's updates was, so that I am informed as if I had been a part of that meeting, even though I wasn't physically a part of it. And the same goes that I would update my information for the rest of my team to read, maybe out loud or just on their own, all of my updates, even though I wasn't there to actually give that update and identify how I'm doing on my KPIs and my pillar updates and things like that. They are still just as informed about what I've got going on and how well I'm doing, even though I wasn't able to make that weekly meeting or that daily huddle. So I think those are both really, really critical benefits of it. So there was a question posed, we're all human, right? Funniest story where a meeting went wrong for you guys?
The funniest story where, oh my gosh, I've had more meetings go wrong than
right.
go right.
I'll go. While you're thinking about it, Jeff, I'll go. This isn't necessarily where the meeting went wrong, but this is just the funny part that we do. So you talked about the importance of being on time. So when we have quarterly planning sessions, the meeting starts at 8 a.m. Typically, if someone is late to the quarterly planning session, the last person to attend, or anybody who arrives after the start time, has to stand in front of the entire group and sing "I'm a Little Teacup" with the actual hand movements and gestures as well. So they're literally standing in front of all of their colleagues singing "I'm a little teapot, here's my spout, here's my handle, tip me over and pour me out." And it's as silly as that, but it's an embarrassing thing that makes people want to arrive on time or even a few minutes early, so they're not the ones who are having to do that.
Do you ever have anybody arrive late just so that they can sing the song? I would worry about Joe just saying, no, I want to sing.
Just 1 minute, just so I can sing the song.
I'm struggling to come up with a funny story of meetings going wrong just because somebody asked for it. But I've got, what I have done is lots of situations where we're leading a workshop, where I come to this is through situations where we're leading workshops, trying to get work done, and the meeting just veers off into directions that, and I'm standing there in front of a group trying to herd these cats together to get them to focus on this one thing that we all said that we were going to focus on, and they're all in 25 different directions, which is, where I really started structuring structuring the meetings themselves. But Joe has a good story of somebody who was perpetually late. Joe, you should tell that story. You know which one I mean?
Which one? No.
He was showing up late to the meeting. So one of the things that we do in our Thrivers groups is we also have
yeah. So we have this weekly meeting, right? And this guy was late all the time. So I talked to the group and I said, well, what are we going to do about this? And they said, oh, that's easy. We're going to impose a penalty for being late, right? We're going to penalty for being late. And I said, okay, how about $10 a minute? And they said, okay, right? So I announced this later. Okay, we're going to do this $10 a minute, right? And I sent an email out, and the guy says, what? $10 a minute? He says, he came on the meeting and he was on time that day, but he came on the meeting and then he got off the meeting. He said, $10 a minute. That's it. I'm out of here. I'm never going to come back. These people, I don't know what they're doing. Or I could just grow up and be on time. Right. And something happened for him where he figured out that he could just grow up and be on time. And he said he started being on time for that meeting. And that turned into being on time for all his clients. And now he has no tolerance for people that are late. So that was a fun one that was a real transformation for him, where like he's just like a whole different world. And just to highlight on that is that his business is now taking off. Like it's through the roof because he sends proposals on time. He shows up on time. He does what he says. And that makes such a huge difference for people that it just changes everything. So it was funny and really productive.
That's the perfect example of the adage that time is money.
Yeah.
All right, we have about 5 minutes left. If anybody has any questions, I did want to clarify one point, Jeff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to build out an example of how you can use the Align software to recreate that agenda that you've created for a leadership huddle. And so I'll create a video. We'll post that as part of the blog post for this particular webinar so that some people can watch that video and see how you can customize a huddle within the Align software to follow that framework that you've outlined here for us today. So that's what we'll do. And we'll certainly share that link to the template itself and to your program. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to voice those now. Things are sort of dying down. We want to give everybody maybe a few minutes back. So what I will do is I'll give us our closing thoughts. I just want to thank everybody for attending today's Coach webinar. A big thank you to Jeff and to Joe for a great presentation. As they noted, you can learn more about Start, Grow, Manage by visiting their website at startgrowmanage.com. As always, we encourage you to use the Align software to make the most out of your meetings through our huddle functionality. We just released some new updates for huddle cadences that allow you real flexibility for when your huddles are scheduled, and we will be introducing and releasing new software updates hopefully by the end of the month, which will completely redesign our user interface for huddles as well. So there's lots of exciting things to come. We certainly encourage you to reach out to your advisor or simply email us at support@aligntoday.com. Just checking, making sure we didn't have any other questions. Seeing none, thank you everybody for joining us. We hope that you will join us for our next Coach webinar. Till then, we hope you have a great day. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Joe.
Thanks,
Awesome.
guys. Lovely
Thanks for
to be
having
here.
us.
Bye.